Oh, hello there, and welcome to Phil Talking D20. As promised yesterday, today's video is a look at the Summoner class, which has been dropped in the Secrets of Sorcery playtest by Paizo. Again, the link will be in the description down below if you missed the first video and you're not sure what I'm talking about. But basically, Paizo are playtesting the two new classes for the Secrets of Magic book, which comes out summer next year. Obviously it's going to be chock full of spells and all sorts of other good stuff, but there's these two new classes. The first one we've covered in yesterday's video about the Magus. Today it's the Summoner. So what makes the Summoner Mr. Fancy Pants? I suppose to sum it up super quickly, it's like a caster, a spellcaster, who has an incredibly potent animal companion or familiar. In terms of a kind of a loose idea, you don't have as much magic as you would if you were a wizard with a familiar, but what you have, because you don't have as much magic, is a really potent kind of ally that is kind of magically manifest from a particular source. And within the kind of the makeup of the rules, obviously a huge focus of the class is creating and diving into this Eidolon, this creature that, from a mystical source that accompanies you, and why it might accompany you, and a range of background that creature can come from. And I've got to say, I quite like this idea. It's quite funky. You can do a lot with it in terms of role play as well, because there's a big kind of focus on the notion that you might have two distinctly different characters on the table, so to speak, that you are involved in playing, in the form of the Summoner and the Eidolon. And there's a kind of a dive into the dynamics of things that you could consider regards to that relationship and how it can develop, and how you might choose to play one kind of element of the class one way and the other element of the class the other. So I think there's quite an interesting opportunity for a player to have almost two characters in a game, so to speak, in terms of how they could think through the role play and the kind of the stuff they do with them as kind of an entity, which is quite a cool idea. Now, in terms of, I suppose, the rough dynamics of what the class entails, level 1, ancestry and background, initial proficiencies, Eidolon, spellcasting, and conduit spells. Now, effectively, I mean, one of the things that's actually quite nice, key ability is charisma, hit points are 10 plus con, and because this is using the kind of the established framework that we have for things like animal companions, where they're built off your stats to simplify their creation process, but also make them richer and fuller and more capable. 10 hit points basically means that you and it are pretty hench when it comes to, putting up a fight, especially if you built your Eidolon and your main character as being kind of combat lent in terms of like stats. You might go with high strengths in both. Do you know what I mean? That kind of a vibe. Alternatively, just to flip it on its head, one of you can be the brains and one of you can be the brawn. I think that's why it's quite a cool class, in the way that it offers you these two different channels in the game environment to kind of play with. But 10 hit points a level plus con, that's pretty tasty. It's pretty damn tasty. Trained in perception, expert fortitude, trained in reflex, expert in will. Trained in one or more skills determined by your Eidolon. So again, we're looking at these pathways where if you choose one particular thing, it kind of puts a steer on the class in a certain direction. We'll touch on those in a bit more detail in a few moments. And then trained in a number of skills equal to 3 plus your intelligence modifier. Simple weapons and unarmed attacks only, but it's not really a big deal. You can always knock a feat in at 3rd level to get martial, if you're so fussed. Trained in unarmored defense, so you're not trained in armor, but who cares? Your mate's a big giant lizard of death, or something to that effect. Let's have a quick look. And then obviously trained in spells DCs, and that kind of good stuff, as you'd expect. Now, manifesting an Eidolon is a 3-action thing, but then once it's done, it's done, and it's hanging around. Obvious things apply. If you're reduced to 0 hit points, it's dispelled, and same when it reaches 0 hit points, it's dispelled, and you have to do that again to bring it back, with some rules and limitations on that, but nothing silly. That's perfectly normal rulesy stuff. I'm not going to kind of bog down in that too much. There are abilities within the class that are designed for you to do things in unison with your Eidolon to get more effect and more benefit out of them, for in terms of actions and spells and things like that, which is quite cool. There's definitely mechanics focused on you being able to work with it easier, which is nice. That's a good shout. You can share your sensors, all that kind of cool stuff, though they do have to stay within 100 feet of you, because you're endemically linked together as part of the kind of the flavor and the fluff of the class. You're a shared kind of life essence with this other being for mystical reasons that you can kind of take a steer on and kind of get ideas from the class rules. Again, they get focus spells, as well as a limited selection of spell slots like the Magus did, where you only get kind of 2 per day unless you build into that with the feats pool and choose to kind of really focus in on magic with the feat picks in the class. And then again, the usual trope of kind of your stats and abilities, and the Eidolon stats and abilities improving and increasing, and it unlocking abilities as it levels up alongside you. All of that, again, though, relates to the type of Eidolon you choose, and they are initially quite varied. But I'll see what you think. So there's angel Eidolons, which they've kind of classified as celestial beings in general. So although they've used the term angel, they're not explicitly saying only angels. That's their kind of general good outsider vibe, as I suppose, if you like, a conceptual way of imagining it and portraying it. Beast Eidolons, which are life force, kind of manifestations of the primal nature of life. So to pop back to the angel one, what I also forgot to say was that also determines your spell casting pool. So that obviously is divine spell casting based, whereas if you choose the beast kind of Eidolon template, that is primal spells as your spell list and so forth. What else have we got? They give you special abilities. So the angel gives you Traveler's Aura at 7th level. When you reach that level, you basically get a 20-foot emanation centered on the Eidolon that protects everyone around it from extreme heat and cold, which is pretty cool. It means you can kind of walk through the desert with this Eidolon and not be bothered by the extreme heat, or go into the frozen wastes of the north and visit the kind of, you know, some Vikings in the ice wastes and not be bothered about the cold. So yeah, little cool things like that are always nice. And they all have a tailored series of abilities based on their flavour. So Primal Roar, for the bestial one, is an example of one thing it can do. The Devotion Phantom Eidolon. Your Eidolon is a lost soul, unable to escape the mortal world. There's some other fluff that comes after that, but again, another option you've got there for that, and that is occult spells and spell casting. Then you've got Dragon Eidolon, which is arcane, and you basically have an arcanely, magically manifested dragon that hangs around with you, as you do. To give you an idea of their stats, before obviously you download the PDF and make this your next character, to help in the playtest. Do you want to know more? We're back to that joke again. So starts as size medium. Its primary melee weapon damage is a D8 plus its strength modifier, and its secondary has the agile trait and is 1d4. And then they suggest what you could use those for, because they again have this process of saying, here's the framework, be creative with your Eidolon. You're not being locked into mandatory decisions. So although they're giving you these broad pools to think in based on the kind of the magic that's involved, they're quite kind of loose with what you kind of say stuff is. So the suggested attacks are, you could perhaps have a claw slashing, jaws piercing, a horn piercing, a tail bludgeoning, or a wing bludgeoning as options for how you choose to assign their primary and secondary attack. They've got a strength of 16, a dex of 16, a con of 16, an intelligence of 10, a wisdom of 10, and a charisma of 10. So again, they're like a character. Do you know what I mean? You've basically got another character, and they vary slightly, but yeah, that's pretty useful, isn't it? Skills, Arcana and Intimidation are the skills you're given as a class, and then obviously those 3 plus your intelligence modifier on top. Dark Vision as a sense, language, draconic, speed 25 feet. Eidolon abilities, initial, breath weapon. What a surprise. When you get the Eidolon symbiosis, they get draconic frenzy. And then Eidolon Transcendence, which obviously is a much later class feature, Worm's Breath, bigger breath weapon. That's it in a nutshell. That's kind of the rough process. And every time you level up, your Eidolon levels up. And there's feat picks that will buff it or buff you or buff both of you. Well, there you go, it's a tongue twister, isn't it? But yeah, there's a good level of kind of oomph. And in a way, you can almost treat Summoner as a variation on a class type. You know, it is its own thing. It's fundamentally its own class. It is its own class. It is the Summoner. But in terms of a reflavouring, if you want to play a really different kind of druid, be a Summoner and have the beast kind of life essence, primal spellcasting Eidolon pick, and have like a crazy nature magic, like created super bear, animal companion kind of Eidolon entity that's your sidekick, and not as much magic because you've got a really potent kind of guardian spirit from nature, animal companion style kind of creature, but for all intents and purposes, act and behave like a druid. Because you've got this kind of variant druid build now with your primal magic, just like a druid, not as many spells, but a powerfuler nature beast-based, wild kind of life-based kind of animal companion Eidolon super sidekick to come on kind of ass-kicking adventures with you. You know, and again, the same with a wizard or a sorcerer with like a familiar. You know, you can almost take this as a kind of a reflavouring, and maybe you're a sorcerer or a wizard at the Mages University who has radically changed into a new thesis on magical study, where you're not as good as magic as other members of the kind of the Wizards College, but you've got this incredible super familiar that's like a really powerful like dragon. That's like literally manifested of arcane magic that aids you in your adventures. And that, I think, is what I really like about the Summoner class. What it is cool, but it also presents you these different filters that you can suddenly kind of be like, well, I can just kind of use this to be a new kind of that, if that's what you want to do with it. Yeah, definitely like it. I definitely recommend getting a download and genuinely looking at Magus and genuinely looking at Summoner, because what's really nice about this is if you download the PDF, you've got both classes free for life. If you like what's here enough and you're happy with what's here and the changes they make aren't too drastic, and the play experience that these rules give you is solid enough, you've got 2 free classes added to your collection of growing classes available to you. And as I've just demonstrated, more opportunities to play wonderful and interesting characters using existing concepts from kind of, classic kind of RPG experience. Oh, I'm a variant druid, or just being a really cool take on what you want to do with a summoner class. Yeah, definitely recommend having a thunk on it and having a good read through, and do try and get involved in the playtest, because it's as simple as having a chat with a GM if you're a player and saying, look, my character's level 4. Can I sideline him and say that he's going to go off and see his family or whatever, and me bring in a new level 4 summoner or new level 4 magus just for a few sessions so we can play test it and see how it works in our world, and then I'll do some feedback for the playtest and send it off, and I'll then just have this character say, right, anyway, thanks for your time. I'm going to go off and do this for whatever reason and retire him, and bring your new one back, your old one back, and say, right, he's dropping back in. All right, guys, I'm back from my holiday. How's it been? Who was that bloke heading down the street? Oh, he was a magus. He was amazing. Or, oh, he was a magus. He was meh. Do you know what I mean? Just do it. A couple of sessions, 2 or 3 sessions, slot them in, slot them out. Or keep it if you really like it. I think you will. I think they're both very cool classes. So in terms of, I suppose, really trying to get into establishing the general ethos of what you can do with this, I think that's probably about it, isn't it? Because I don't want to just sit and read it all out again, because you can just go and get this PDF right now. Literally just click on the link down there and it will take you to the article, and you can click the download PDF and boom. 2 free classes. Wow! And on that bombshell, I'm going to sign off, and I will see you on the next video, hopefully next week. But yeah, definitely get a kick-ass summoner or a crazy magus on your tables. You need it. It'll be good. Bye.